Good evening. We're back with another episode of the Lord of the Rings LCG Progression Series. And tonight is a card review of the City of Ulfast. So, let's take a look. This is the second quest of the Vengeance of Mordor cycle. The hero is Lothriel. Probably not pronouncing that right. 8 threat, 3113. If Eomer is in play, Lothriel gains the Rohan trait. After Lothriel commits to a quest, choose an ally in your hand. If that ally shares a trait with her, put that ally into play exhausted and committed to the quest. At the end of the phase, if that ally is still in play, shuffle it into your deck. Well, to take full advantage of this ability, you would need strong card draw. And she doesn't provide it, so you would need to play her with a strong card draw hero, most likely. Although it's possible strong card draw events or something like that would work. Her 3 willpower is almost good enough, but not quite, to make her a candidate for an elite hero. But what does she provide? She does not fulfill any of the 4 main roles. She does not provide resource generation. She does not provide card draw. She does not provide strong attack, and she does not provide strong defense. Now, she provides temporary cost reduction on 1 ally. Under the right conditions, and with the condition that you can only use that ally for questing unless you have another way of readying it. And at the end of the phase, so it converts one of your allies into a one-time use event where you add its willpower to the quest. This doesn't really fulfill any of our main roles. It could be a relatively strong questing hero with strong card draw. But at this point in the game, that's not really something we're looking for, so this would be like a supporting hero. We don't usually have room in decks for supporting heroes. You need all of your hero slots for the other roles to defeat the elite quests. The role of pure questing hero was something we needed early in the game's life cycle. But now, not so much. Now you need resource generation, card draw, attack, defense. And so finding a card slot for a purely questing hero is difficult. And so I would classify this hero as a thematic or fun hero, but not an elite one. Angbor the Fearless, 2 cost, 2 willpower, 1 attack, 0 shields, 2 health. Well, 2 for 2 is good. While your threat is 40 or higher, Angbor gets +2 attack and does not exhaust a quest. That's a great card. That card's really strong. 2 cost for 2 willpower is good, and then getting a Valor effect is really good. On top when it's, because you're not really needing that for it just to be a good card. And it's Gondor as well. This is a great card. This is going to find a slot in a lot of different decks. It scales up well. It provides 2 willpower for 2 cost early in the game. Then in the late game it scales up. The only time this is not good is if you're playing a deck, well, if you're playing a deck where you never get over 40, I don't think you would play this. But otherwise I like this card a lot. I think this is very good. Two for 2 willpower is good, and the bonus ability when you're over 40 is fantastic. Great card. Is it a must include? I'd give it a look in a lot of different decks. I think that's very good. Very, very strong. It doesn't unlock any like new or cool strategies, but it's very, very strong for a lot of decks. Need drives them. 3 cost. Each player whose threat is 40 or higher readies all characters he controls. That's very good. Grim Resolve, but only can be used at 40 or higher. So it's bad in the early game. I don't know if you can run 3 of them because you're super sad to draw at like turn 1. Unless your deck is designed to go to 40 threat. And you could do that with cards from the last expansion that put you at 40 threat. I don't think that deck is very good because it's too risky to put yourself there at turn 1. And if you have to wait to do it, then you've got dead cards for a while. This is a very good card in the late game and a very bad one in the early game. So it might have a place in certain strategies. I don't know if you play 3 of it though, maybe 1 or 2, which means you may not be able to rely on it without good card draw. It may have a niche place though. It may. It's not like Angbor where it's strong even when you're not over 40 and then it gets extra strong when you are. Need drives them is very weak when you're under 40, but very good when you're over 40 threat. Woodland Sentry, 3 cost, 1/1/1, 2 health. After you play Woodland Sentry from your hand, choose an enemy or location in play. If there's a copy of that card in the victory display, discard the chosen card. That's very niche. So if you've already placed an enemy or location in the victory display, then you can discard a duplicate of it. You don't get duplicates of cards in the victory display that often, and it only happens on certain quests. This is a very, very niche card. And it's very bad if you can't take advantage of its ability. Even being Sylvan, it's bad. So, no, probably not. Only in the rarest of circumstances could you make Woodland Sentry work. Yeah, very, very niche. At best. Keen Longbow, 2 cost, attached to a lore hero, limit 1 per hero. Attached hero gains ranged. After attached hero is declared as an attacker against an enemy, discard up to 3 cards from your hand to deal 1 damage to that enemy for each card discarded. Well, it gives you a use for extra cards if you have really strong card draw and a lot of duplicates. If you have strong card draw and a lot of duplicates, I would not consider that particularly strong deck design. So if this card's only good when you discard a lot of cards, you would need something like, I don't know, Elven Light that's designed to be discarded or something like that. Or you could pair it with the Noldor deck that's kind of designed to discard a lot of cards and recycle them with Will of the West. But on its own in a lore deck, I don't think this is very good. Paired with the aforementioned deck, like a Noldor deck where you're cycling cards and you're also playing a lore hero, like for example Aristor, could this be good? You could make it work. I don't think it would be good. You could make it functional. It's not going to be like a phenomenal card. You could make it function. Takes some doing to do though, which makes it fairly niche. Curious card design in this adventure pack. You got Angbor the Fearless that's really good, but the other cards are hit and miss, we'll say. Hit and miss. How much damage would you need to get out of King Longbow to make it good? Well, you're not going to be getting damage every round, I don't think. If you got 4 out of it, you discarded 4 cards to it, that would make it a decent event, but still not something I would play. I think to make this card actually a good card, it's tough. Like a card that you would play over, for example, another ally, a combat-focused ally. That's tough to see. That's very tough for me to see a situation where that makes sense to me. So I don't think this card is very good. War Axe, 1 cost attached to a tactics character, limit 1 per character. Attached character gets +1 attack for each attachment it has with the restricted keyword. Likely going to be 2 at this point in the game. +2 at best. If you're getting +2 attack out of it, it's good. probably isn't going to be very good. Well, it itself gives you automatically one attack. Then you can get another one once you get another card out with restricted attachments. It's pretty good if you're playing a lot of restricted attachments. 2 attack for 1 cost is pretty good on an attachment. So if you're playing a lot of restricted attachments and you need the damage boost, this is worth a look. This is decent. The caveat of only being able to go on a tactics character is pretty limiting, because there's not a lot of tactics characters worth playing due to their low willpower. They don't get into a lot of really elite decks, except for like Baragon, but he doesn't do a lot of attacking. Or Eowyn, but she doesn't do a lot of attacking either, except for her 1 turn attack. So, this card is good if you have a tactics character to use it on, and you play a lot of restricted attachments, but fairly narrow use for its best case scenario due to its restriction of needing to attach to a tactics character only. At least in true solo and multiplayer, there's often a tactics player. So it could make sense there. More sense there, let's say. Strength and Courage, 1 cost, attached to the hero with the 1 ring. So it's a master card. Attached hero gets +1 attack. After attached hero is declared as an attacker, exhaust the 1 ring and raise your threat by 1. To double attached hero's printed attack for this attack. That's really good. Whoa. That's really, really good. That may be the best master card, and I really liked Inner Strength. That's really, really strong. Double your hero's printed attack for this attack. Okay. Well, that helps to overcome a lot of different challenges, especially since it's an attachment. You can use it multiple times. You're guaranteed to get it out if you want to. That's really good. That helps to overcome a lot of different challenges in the Nightmare Mode quests. That card alone is worth buying this adventure pack for. It's a very, very, very strong card that's going to open up a lot of different hero combinations as viable for different quests. Very strong card. Doesn't even matter what the rest of the cards are. That card alone is worth buying the adventure pack for if you're a serious player. Knight of Belle Philos, 2 cost 1/2/02, Gondor. After Knight of Belle Philos enters play, return a Gondor ally from your discard pile to your hand. Alright, well 2 cost for 2 attacks, good, and it's got Gondor synergy. I'd run it in a Gondor deck if I'm running Spirit. I don't think it's good outside of a Gondor deck. You don't really need 2 cost to attack that much. It's kind of a... Yeah, you're looking for, at this point in the game, I'm looking on an ally for a combat ally of allies that can get up to 4 attack. That's really all I'm looking for a combat ally in this range, in this cost range. But in a Gondor Swarm deck, this could be decent because you can buff it with Visionary Leadership or Boromir, and it allows you to get some retrieval of Gondor allies if you're using them for chump blockers. So I like the card in that deck, in the Gondor deck. Horn of the Mark, attached to a Rohan hero or Merry. When a character leaves play, if that character shares at least 1 trait with the attached hero, exhaust Horn of the Mark to draw 1 card. Okay, so it's a synergistic card that works with a lot of different synergies, though it can only go on Rohan or Merry, so the synergy it makes the most sense with is Rohan. So if you put it on a Rohan hero and a character leaves play that shares a trait, a Rohan trait, or it could go on a Hobbit, Merry, you can exhaust it to draw a card. That's good for the Rohan deck. The Rohan deck needs that. Card draw. That's good. It doesn't don't start the game with it. So a problem with a lot of decks isn't that they can't get to elite if they get their perfect setup, it's the difficulty of getting them there. And Rohan does lack card draw, and this card helps with that in the games when you draw at turn 1 or get it out right away. But it does require some setup, and therefore it's not going to elevate Rohan to elite. Rohan really needs a hero with this like built into it to be elevated to elite, but it does help, and it makes it more playable, makes Rohan more playable, so that's good. These spirit cards are both supporting cards for archetypes, Knight of Belle Philos for Gondor, and Horn of the Mark for Rohan, which help those decks out, but they're not going to elevate them to elite status. Don't care much for the lore cards in this adventure pack, and Angbor is good, and Strength and Courage is really good. Host of Galadriel. 4 cost, neutral card. Return each Sylvan ally you control to your hand. Then play each of those allies from your hand one at a time at no cost. Well, that's really interesting. Requires a lot of setup. So you'd be super sad about drawing this early in the game. It won't do anything. But once you have like 2 or 3 Sylvans, let's say you have 4 cost worth of Sylvans that you want to cycle, you can return them, then play each of them from your hand for no cost. So basically it just triggers their in play effects, the effect that they have that procs when you put it in play. You can trigger each of those effects on a Sylvan ally. Depends on the quality of your Sylvan allies that you have out, what they do, to see if this is worth it or not. My guess is to get 4 cost worth of value out of this event, you're going to need some setup, and to make this card really good you're going to need a lot of setup. So much setup that if you have it you probably don't need the card. It's probably overkill. So I don't think this card is ever going to be really, really good. To just make it okay or functional or good, it's not going to happen in the early game. Could happen in the later game if you're triggering 2 or 3 abilities, Sylvan abilities at once, but after I thought about this for a bit, I think this is overcosted for what it does. I think it's very hard to make it really good, and it's going to sit in the hand a lot and not do much because you got other things you want to spend 4 resources on. And now we come to the contract for this adventure pack, which is Forth the 3 Hunters. Your deck cannot include ally cards. Okay. Well, the last one we couldn't include attachment cards, and that's a near lethal caveat. Not being able to include ally cards is pretty bad. So let's see what this actually does to offset that. Each of your heroes can have 1 additional restricted attachment, so you can have 3. Reduce the cost of the first restricted attachment you play on each of your heroes each round by 1. Okay. If each of your heroes has at least 2 restricted attachments, flip this card over. So it gives you some cost reduction. Each of your heroes can have 1 additional restricted attachment and gets +1 willpower for each restricted attachment. So in the perfect scenario, it's +3 willpower per hero. Exhaust this card to heal 1 damage from each of your heroes. So the +1 willpower for each restricted attachment I wouldn't really call a benefit. It more just offsets the quest's downside of not being able to include ally cards. So when you flip this over, can you then play ally cards? Is that how it works, or does the other side still apply? Well, let's assume we're not doing that. Each of your heroes can have 1 additional restricted attachment, gets +1 willpower for each restricted attachment on it. So the benefit, you get potentially 9 willpower to offset the caveat of not being able to include allies. That's not really enough for a lot of quests. We're not thinking about, can this contract work sometimes? I'm more thinking about, is this this contract that will be used in an elite deck. And there's a bunch of times in the past with quests where I've needed to quest for as much as 50 or so. Quest for really high amounts. That's not going to happen with 4th of 3 hunters. Being able to include one additional restricted attachment and the +9 willpower at most is not going to offset not being able to include ally cards, such as Faramir or strong willpower allies like Furiel, for example. So the plus willpower is not enough for some quests. For some quests it is, but for some quests it isn't. And the other bonus of exhausting this card to heal 1 damage from each of your heroes isn't going to do enough to, again, offset the downside of not being able to include allies. So this quest is going to be, you can play it. You can play this contract in some quests. It'll be fun, it'll be thematic. But there's quests you're not going to be able to due to the willpower limitation that comes from not playing allies. So like the quest from last adventure pack of not being able to play attachments, you can kind of force it to work in some situations and it'll probably be pretty fun to do so. I likely will enjoy that. However, this is not going to be an elite contract, unfortunately, due to its downside. It's too big to overcome, given the benefits. But Strength and Courage is a ridiculous card, and is worth the price of admission all by itself. Phenomenal card. So, thanks for watching.